I'm Justin Barrett. I'm president of Blueprint 1543. I'm a psychological scientist and a former university professor. In this episode, I want to talk about food and eating. I'm going to back up before I get into why this is so important, and I want to talk about a psychological system that's part of our natural human equipment. It's our disgust system. So often psychologists who study emotions, scholars fight about all kinds of things. And one of the things they fight about is how many basic primary emotions do we have that are pretty much in every human all over the world. And, is it five? Is it six? There are these debates. But certainly one of the basic emotions that are often talked about in this context is the disgust emotion. And that whole disgust, you might think of it as a psychological system inside of our bodies. Disgust is a real basic one. And it's easy to see why. It's important for mom to be able to communicate to babies right away, or whatever, or dad, I guess, or grandmother, or, Aunt Betty, whoever, needs to be able to communicate. Don't put that in your mouth. That's disgusting. Very quickly. And we do this through our facial expressions of disgust. And there's the characteristic, everybody knows the kind of, we scrunch up our face, our lip kind of curls up, and you'll notice that it kind of blocks the bottom of your nose a little bit, like it's keeping those bad odors or something from getting up in your nose, because things can smell disgusting, they can taste disgusting, which are overlapping ideas, they can look disgusting. That disgust system is really important for us because maybe it keeps us away from rotting foods, it keeps us away from diseased matter, including, stuff that came out from in the inside of the body and those kinds of things. And so we need this disgust mechanism, and it's there pretty early naturally. Maybe you've seen disgust represented in the Disney movie Inside Out. I think it was that little green person there. It naturally applies to foods, but it gets extended to apply to people and ideas too. So it's a very powerful kind of emotion. One of the fascinating things about our sense of smell and that disgust emotion that's sort of triggered by certain kinds of smells is that it forms really deeply ingrained memories, often as a warning to avoid this particular kind of food. And so you get these almost like core memories that are anchoring, sometimes for our identity, sometimes just for our safety. I actually once had this experience, I call it the cheeseburger effect, because I was on a road trip, when I was a kid, in a station wagon probably, driving up to see grandparents for one of the holidays. We stop at a fast food restaurant. I have the cheeseburger, but I'm in the back of the big land boat kind of car from the 70s where, eventually I get car sick and puke my guts out. And I couldn't even think about cheeseburgers for about a decade after that. Our disgust mechanism is that powerful enough that in this case, it sort of made a mistake. It said, that the cheeseburger was the problem instead of the motion sickness from the car. But that's supposed to protect us from returning to poisonous stuff that really could make us sick. But interesting thing about its development is that it needs some tuning up. And in early childhood, we see the disgust mechanism tuning up. It's not like the 2-month-old infant knows everything that's disgusting and everything that isn't, with any perfection. Instead, it seems that in that first year of life, there's a whole lot of, we just stick stuff in our mouths because it's important, and we rely on these giant people around us to tell us, no, not that, no, not that. Ooh, that's yucky. Ooh, don't do that. But then kids learn that lesson, and then the pendulum seems to swing the other direction, and then everything's disgusting. Oh no, the carrots touched the peas. That's disgusting. Look at Johnny, his clothes are disgusting. He's disgusting. Oh, you're disgusting. She's disgusting. Everything's disgusting. And they can get a little OCD looking. And I'm not even kidding. Kids really do seem to naturally have this tuning up period where they kind of overcorrect for being the disgusting things that they were earlier, and now they're sort of overly fastidious about certain kinds of things and find the wrong things disgusting. And there's this social tuning going on all the time. So it's one of these natural systems that has this big cultural component too, and social component that helps tune it up until we arrive at the adult state of a fairly strong cultural consensus, at least traditionally, about what's disgusting and what isn't, and especially surrounding foods. What kinds of things are okay to put in your mouth and what things aren't. And the interesting thing about that is that because this has to be tuned up in that early development, like 2, 3 years old, there are often these food items in our cultural environment that we like because they were introduced at that age. But if they weren't introduced at that age, then they're kind of hard to like. And almost every cultural group has these things. And of course, it's easy to pick on other people's, oh, that's gross, that's disgusting. So, we might say, I don't know, that some people think Vegemite is disgusting, but don't tell that to your typical Australian, right? And you get into a fight. They don't think it's disgusting. Why? They've been exposed to it early. It sort of pushes the boundary of what is sort of normal, good tasting food. Or raw fish, or even live octopi, maybe in a Japanese context. Well, it's not disgusting to a Japanese person, but it may be disgusting to an American. Or, I don't know, pickled herring from, the Baltic countries, or, Scandinavia and stuff. Some of the, rotting fish that they eat. And see, my face is even showing the disgust. And I know that's culturally insensitive, but and South Africans have their rotting meat too. They're all of these things that people all over the world, heck, different regions of the United States too. When I went and met my now wife's family for the first time, they took me to a crab feast because they're from Maryland. And they're like, oh, we're going to show the California boy how to eat crabs. Looked barbaric to me. I mean, they just pour out all of these critters on a table and they're just smashing them with hammers like this. And their guts flying everywhere and body parts. And seems disgusting to me. To them, it is close to heaven. I still don't completely understand, but I've warmed up to it. But partly those disgust reactions and the no, this is a good thing reaction have to do with that tuning up. So we've got friends who are New Englanders. They want their grandkids eating raw oysters. They're, at a nice, proper young age so that they grow up appreciating the joy of raw oysters. Isn't that interesting? If you don't grow up with it, then you might not appreciate it. Why? Because things like raw oysters, things like live octopi, things like bugs, actually push the boundaries of what our natural disgust system finds disgusting. And you have to sort of be trained out of finding those disgusting at a young age, or it's very hard work to warm up to that. Big, long backstory of why it is then that certain kinds of foods and then food practices like the New England clam boil or the Maryland crab smashing extravaganza or the Louisiana crawfish boil or whatever it is, why these different kinds of food rituals are really important sort of social bonding, community bonding events. They slow us down. Well, those in particular, right? Because you're actually having to sort of dismember these animals before you eat them. It hasn't been done for you. So it's slow, and it symbolizes something that the we here do. We do together. And it's easy to see who's not the we, because it's the people who find this disgusting. They're not the we. They're the out group then. So foods can then mark off in-group and out-group pretty effectively because you can't fake it easily. I mean, imagine faking something like that. You walk in and, oh yeah, you've never had a raw oyster before in your life and you're expected to just go ahead and suck one down. And you're, some kind of, loogie tasting kind of thing. And you think it's hard to fake that. So if you wanted to be a spy, they're going to call you out. Yeah, I'm from New England. No, you ain't. We saw. So there's something about food and our disgust mechanism that then has these social implications for how certain kinds of eating practices actually help signal the we, the in-group. And that gives us comfort and assurance. It's nostalgic. Usually these food practices, these eating kinds of rituals are not things you do all the time. They're often kind of expensive, actually. And so they have to be held aside for special occasions. And let me suggest that maybe it's actually best, even if you're super wealthy, maybe it's best that they're held aside for special occasions so that they stay special. And that's what feasting rituals are about, is staying special, using something basic that we all need, the ingestion of food to keep ourselves alive, but set apart in a way that signals hey, we're doing this together. We are enacting community at this moment by eating these foods that are special to us. They don't have to be the disgusting things. Those are just really easy ones to pick out. They could be the rare or the expensive or the seasonal that you can only get at this time of year. And so then when it comes around this time of year, it, it just feels nostalgic. We eat it together as a family or together with our closest friends, our most intimate people, our clan, our group. Those smells and tastes and sights become strongly associated. They become almost visceral so that you can almost smell the holidays. You can smell those memories back into your consciousness when you encounter these special foods. That's what feasting can do for us. But it only really works if we keep some things special. If we set aside certain kinds of foods for certain times of year. If we only eat these while we're celebrating, say, Thanksgiving or Christmas, not, you know what, I just love a turkey. I'm going to do that every weekend. I'm going to eat a turkey, a roast turkey with all the stuff. Like, some people are wealthy enough to do that, but then the turkey isn't special anymore. And then that event isn't set apart anymore. And it's important for us to have these set apart moments that we call holidays. So feasting's a big part of it. It's a big part of it because of the way that our human psychology works around food. It signals as we eat together, there's this intimacy of, hey, you like my food and I like your food, so we are the same kind of people. And there's something important about certain kinds of foods being set apart from regular day-to-day life so that we remember and we form those sort of those strong episodic memories is the jargon, those memories for an event that are very special and make us think, this was a magical moment here. You know, my encouragement as we're in holiday seasons or whatever time of year is to think about what are ways in which you can make your eating special. What are the ways in which you can set aside certain types of foods for those kinds of holidays? How can our feasting be truly celebratory instead of just another day? If you're interested in the fascinating, amusing, and sometimes disturbing research on disgust, the psychology of disgust, Professor Paul Rozin is one of those, that's R-O-Z-I-N, has done he and his collaborators have done some amazing, creative, and disturbing experiments that I'll leave them to you to look into some of those, but just in case you're curious. So those are some of my thoughts around food. If you have any comments, questions, please leave them here. Subscribe, follow us, like us, whatever you want to do. Come back. Let me know anything else you want to talk about. I'm Justin Barrett. Thanks for joining me.